Comrade Ayodele APC, Organizing Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, Lagos State Chapter. I want to thank you so much indeed for coming on Front Row Politics on Control TV.
Thank you for having me.
It's about 8 weeks since Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu got into office as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. What do you make of his policies, his sweeping reforms, the executive orders he has had, as well as economic policies?
Well, he has taken a very clinical approach to solving Nigeria's problems, treating the issue from the foundation. Many a times I've said it, and a lot of ideologues, visionaries have said it also, that to tackle Nigeria's myriad of problems, you need to change some policies, reinvent some, and set aside some in order to have investors' confidence, and of course to have the confidence of the Nigerian people, and to bring smiles to their face once again. In the journey of this renewed hope, definitely there will be one or two hiccups in the sense that unplugging a lot of these leakages might create some imbalance in the system as we go on, but it will get smoothened. An example is the subsidy removal. Basically, people feel that the petroleum product, especially the PMS, popularly known as petrol, is being heavily subsidized as it is. But in reality, it is a sinkhole in the Nigerian economy, a situation whereby Nigeria has to carry the moral burden to subsidize petroleum product for other countries surrounding its borders. And a lot of corruption is embedded in it. I mean, subsidy has been removed now for about 30 days. Nigeria has been able to save a lot of billions and trillions of naira, which again will go into other productive ends. Before it was going to few pockets, while the majority suffer, to the extent that the country cannot pay salaries, to the extent that the country cannot fund its educational system, cannot fund its infrastructure, to the extent that the country is heavily indebted. Right now, the inflow of the country, it's not even commensurate to the loan repayment that the country is being besieged on. In 100%, you spend 95% in servicing of loan, not payment of loan, while the 5% is not even enough to pay salaries. So we can't continue in that trajectory. There must be a bold step, and that the president has taken, and I has foretold during this campaign that on the first day when he's sworn into office, he's going to remove subsidy. And that is the imbalance I've spoken about, that at the initial, it will look a bit rocky. But as we go on, those monies that are saved will go into infrastructure, especially energy infrastructure, and policies that have been reinvented will create an opportunity for people to come into the energy space. We must thank God that President Buhari, before he left, signed that bill to remove the energy industry from the exclusive list, to the extent now that key players, local government, state government, can now come into the industry to also, become part of it. Lagos State ventured into it in year 2000 when they partnered with Enron. But again, the PDP, led by Chief Olusegun Obasanjo as president, then frustrated it. If that have come to being, Lagos will not only have sustainable electrical energy, but again to be selling it to other states and other countries, and to earn us those foreign currencies that we deserve.
If we could just slow down a little and still look at that policy where the president removed the subsidy. The opposition has come down heavily on Mr. President, and I'm sure you're aware of it, saying that he should have first of all set the palliatives in place before removing it in order to protect the Nigerian people from the hardship they're facing. What are your thoughts along that line?
In reality, what are these palliatives? The palliatives that are being proposed is 5,000 naira for every Nigerian, especially those who are living below or are living at the fringes of the poverty line. What will 5,000 naira do for them? So that is why I said the bold step must be taken. You can liken it to a couple that desire to have a baby. The woman must go through a 9-month of transition in order to carry that baby. That 9 months is not going to be very pleasing. But the assurance is that after 9 months, you are going to have a baby in your hands. The opposition that are crying wolf, they have been there since 1999. They plunged us into this crisis that we have found ourselves in.
So you're saying, in other words, it's a little too early to judge?
It's not too early to judge. We don't need to judge anything because we can see the end point. There's a plan on ground. The plan is to block leakages. The plan is to raise funds. The plan is to plow the funds into more meaningful development that will bring smiles to the Nigerian people, that will guarantee of security in our space. A lot of our security men and officers are crying that their welfare is not being well taken care of, right? To take care of those welfare, you need funds. ASU is protesting every day. The enemy is protesting. There's a jackpot syndrome and all of these things. How do you keep people here if you don't have the money to fund it? Even those who are borrowing money are saying that they can't borrow you anymore, that you don't have the threshold to pay. So what do? You have to look inward, block the leakages, face the behemoth that is there, remove it, and let the people breathe.
Let's progress a little bit more. Just 3 days ago, Mr. President was in Guinea-Bissau for the Economic Community of West African States Assembly. He was made the chairman of that regional body in Africa. And to him, it came as a surprise. As a matter of fact, the words that he used for that was that he was given a surprise package. But did it come as a surprise to you that he was elected the chairman of the ECOWAS region?
For somebody like me, it did not come as a surprise. It didn't. The reason is that before now, Ashwaja as a person have been playing critical role to supporting some African countries, especially West African countries. If you remember this particular president that was almost hoisted by the military then, Alpha Conde. He played a critical role in stabilizing the democracy in Guinea, if you remember. And aside from that, a lot of them also do come around, for talks, relationship and all of that, which again he gives advice to them. And his role during the pro-democracy period also earned him that position. Remember that during the clamor for the enthronement of the June 12 mandate, they also went through many countries to advocate, to get country support and all of that. People have been watching, and he's coming into office also bewildered a lot of people across the world, looking at the challenges, the odds before him, and he was able to surmount it. And aside from that, Nigeria is a giant in Africa. Those countries also need Nigerian support in terms of human capital, in terms of resources, in terms of network and contact, in order to push the interests of the West African sub-region forward. And they see him as somebody that have that capacity, to occupy that office. So for me, in terms of capacity, it doesn't come as a surprise. In fact, it's a square peg in a square hole.
We will not allow coup after coup in the African sub-region. Is he expecting the coup?
Coup can come at any time. You can't stop those military junta not to adventure.
Not even in Nigeria?
Not even in Nigeria. You can't stop them. The fact that something has never happened before does not mean that it would never happen. Nobody emphasized a coup in 1966 in the annals of Nigerian history, but it did happen. But as a realist, as a leader, you must plan and think ahead that it is better for us to prevent it. I mean, look at what happened in America. The so-called big democracy of the world was nearly torpedoed by some elements that feel that they can take law into their hands. America never expected their capital to be overrun and all of that. So it's better you give a bold statement and provide leadership and speak hard that you would never tolerate such in your time or any time.
Okay, one of the questions that easily comes to mind when you say the things that you've said concerning this coup whether it can happen or whether it cannot happen. You've gone back history to establish that it could happen at any time. Some have argued that that perhaps is the reason why he has retired those military generals.
The retirement of the military general has nothing to do with coup. It has something to do with performance. I mean, they've been there for a very long time. We keep having spades of attacks. Yes, they've degraded the insurgents, but they've not been able to eliminate all of their tendencies and all. And if you have players on the field of play in a World Cup, you need to win the game, not just to entertain the people. The essence is to win the game. And the players are not delivering the deliverables, and you still have some players on the bench. Definitely a good coach will bring in new players to the field of play in order to win the game. So he has done what is right. And for those people he has brought in, these are people that lead from the front and not from the back, especially the Chief of Army Staff. I mean, I've watched him for quite some time. He's always at the trenches, at the field of battle. He's not leading from the headquarters. He's not moving his headquarters to a place of crisis. He's always there to provide leadership. And once you do that, again, you give some sense of morale to your men. I mean, look at what is happening in Ukraine. The Ukrainian president is always at the front line. He's not at the back line. That is why every Ukrainian is out there fighting the almighty Russia. I mean, whoever believed that Ukraine could sustain that war for that long, even if they are being supported, they have their boot on the ground. So that is what the people at Ashwaju have picked for such position, have been doing prior to now. And you can see the way and manner their people celebrate them and are working with them. So we can only hope for the best.
He has also said that we must fight back. We can't sit like toothless bulldogs in ECOWAS. Does this spell a new dawn for ECOWAS?
Of course, that's the Ashwaju I know. He's a freedom fighter. Ashwaju is a fighter. He has the mind of a lion. He doesn't chicken out from a fight. Remember, he was working in one of the biggest conglomerates in the world, ExxonMobil. He was very comfortable. He won his election to be a senator. And the military junta came in. He could have gone back to ExxonMobil, but he went on exile, selling his properties, family properties, to fund the struggle. And he won with his comrades. They won. They brought in democracy. They fold their sleeves, put their hands on the plow. And that is why Lagos has been a barometer for measuring progress in Nigeria and of course in Africa. It is not easy to build an almost doldrum economy to become the 6th largest economy in Africa. That's the kind of person he is. And again, it's an advantage for Nigeria. For Nigeria to be secured, it means that the countries around Nigeria must be secured. There's a lot of proliferation of arms and ammunition across some Central African countries that are at war within themselves and with each other. See what is happening in Libya. Look at what is happening in Sudan. All of those arms that are coming in there, where do you think they will end up to? So if we are able to form a buffer around the ECOWAS nation, and of course the Central African countries, because that will be the next thing, you have to use that platform to secure the borders of Nigeria, is to entrench into the Central African countries, to also bring them to the table, speak with them, and all interests are put on the table to secure not only our borders, but our economy. I mean, Nigeria is a signatory to the Economic Pact of the ECOWAS Treaty, which allows for movement of people unhindered, movement of commercial activities, and we have not been benefiting much from it.
So how will he now position ECOWAS such that we are in a favorable, Nigeria is in a favorable position to, have this economic emancipation, economic growth and development that the ECOWAS chairman is talking about?
As the chairman of ECOWAS, all of the provision of the treaties, he now have it frontally on his table to make sure that every country keen to it, to make sure that some countries don't become a weak point for other countries across Africa to channel their goods, either smuggle goods or what have you, into ECOWAS in order to weaken our economy. That is what is happening in many of the ECOWAS countries that do not have the capacity to protect their borders or control their economy. Take, for instance, Benin Republic and all of that. Remember, they are still very subservient to France and some other French-speaking countries. And they do not have a robust economy that can put away some of this inflow of goods that might pass through their country. But him there now, using the Nigerian support for them to make them stand on their feet, will be a blessing for Nigeria. And it will also secure production in Nigeria, because by the time the energy sector is totally revamped, Nigeria once again will become a producer nation, whereby sub-African countries will have the reason to do business in Nigeria, and many of these companies that have gone into their country, especially in Ghana and what have you, will come back and have their headquarters here. So it means that we are going to have more jobs created in Nigeria, more opportunity created for Nigerians, and many nationalities across the world will have to come into Nigeria to do business.
Indeed, and in line with what you said, I don't know, perhaps you're having the same thoughts with the ECOWAS chairman, the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because some of your submissions here will tend to suggest as such, where he said that we should serve a warning to exploiters that our people have suffered enough. Do you think that the West, in which the most of Africa is dependent on, and our resources in Africa, especially in West Africa, do you think we're leveraging enough to keep our people satisfied and protect their economic interest?
The interests have not been balanced enough. It hasn't. The West still remain the resource base in which developed countries have come to survive. We have abundance of natural resources in Africa. The missing gap is the human capital that would transform these natural resources to goods and services that can be beneficial to Africa and Africans. As long as our natural resources are being refined and processed in Europe and brought back to Africa, it is not in our economic advantage. So, as you have said, it's going to really invest massively in education in order to improve human capital. Education is the only thing that can improve human capital, and that is what the Arab nation is doing right now. They are investing massively in education, and the human capital is what has improved their tourism potential, especially in Dubai and in Saudi Arabia, as it is now. If you look at the Saudis, they are investing massively in human capital, even in sport. They are buying players, big players from all over the world. Buying these big players is not just to put them there as unique players, but again, to improve the confidence of their people to go into sport. And you know, sport is a very big business enterprise and all of that. Even tourism. I mean, who could ever imagine that Saudi Arabia can open its four walls to tourism now, allowing for one of the biggest projects that wanders the world to start coming out of there. They have abundance of oil. They're not looking at just oil alone. They are looking at sustainable energy resource. They are going into space. And it's only the human capital that can open such gateway for you. And that is what Ashwaju is doing in Nigeria. And by extension, with his leadership in the ECOWAS, is going to also pull all of these countries to do likewise. And by the time the West African sub-region is heavily in advantage, then we can take it to AU. Then the dream of Africa becoming the giant of the world and taking his right position in the world would have been achieved.
We should make a pledge that in furtherance of our sub-regional growth and recovery, we will promote democracy and the rule of law. In Nigeria, we are back. Are we truly back?
We are back because we, like I said earlier, we have a square peg in a square hole. He has only spoken like our founding fathers, right? He has spoken like Awolowo, he has spoken like Azikiwe, he has spoken like the Saudana. When they came pre-independence, they have a vision for Nigeria. Their vision was not to go cap in hand. Their vision was to develop their regions in accordance to their capacity and peculiarity and come to the center and relate with one another. Their vision was to liberate African countries that were looking to gain independence. And Nigeria used its resources to help many African countries to gain independence, especially for South Africa. Remember that it was in this same Africa that Nelson Mandela once seek refuge, and all of Thabo Mbeki once seek refuge, schooled here, slept in Mushi, and many of them. It is in this same Africa that they use the resources to support Thomas Sankara and many other African countries that later gained independence, to the extent that the West started trying to strangulate the Nigerian economy, believing that we were too opportunistic and we were extending those opportunities for our African brothers to stay on their feet. It was in this same African country, Nigeria, that the King of Saudi came here for medical tourism in order to get cured and all of this. So he has only spoken with the spirit of our founding fathers that we are back, and with hard work we will do better than our founding fathers.
Let's bring Charity back home. When do we expect the president's ministerial list?
We shouldn't be in a hurry. There is a window of law in time that provides for that, right? Let's allow him to do the right thing. Within the reality of what is on ground, you don't need to take a rush. All interests must be discussed with. All interests must be consulted. And all interests must be brought on board. At the end of the day, the president will come out with a fine list of ministerial nominee that will go to the National Assembly, and by the grace of God, they get screened and the full-fledged work will begin.
Do you think the opposition, PDP, and indeed Labour Party, that are in courts now, are forging ahead with the conviction that this is an illegitimate government?
They are propelled by the conviction of a reality that holds no water in our laws. But again, we should allow the law, judiciary, to play their role. We must not be distracted. We must put our hands on the plow and never look back. That is why it's a democracy. Whoever that feel that his interest is not well opined on, they are free to seek judicial redress. The law will interpret itself and will interpret the facts that are brought before it.
Let's narrow it down a little bit further to the state, where you are organizing secretary of the All Progressives Congress, the APC, the leading party in the country. How has it been for His Excellency Sanwo-Olu in the policies that he has instituted, looking at the previous 4 years and looking ahead the next 4 years?
It has been wonderful, and it has been very challenging. Challenging because of the fact that everybody believes that the grass is greener in Lagos, and because Lagos has no border control, Lagos tends to cope with the meager resource that it has in order to cater for the human drifts that besiege its resources, which again is not commensurate to each other. And Lagos is very accommodating. So the more Lagos improves, the more people come. It's like having a resource that can cater for 100, and you're having 1 million people coming just to overrun that resource. But yet Lagos is not saying go back to where you have come from. Lagos is only saying obey the laws, obey the norms, obey the culture, so that we can all live together. It's only in Lagos you have people coming as peasants and go back as billionaires. Lagos is very, very accommodating, very opportunistic. But the government of Lagos State have also taken huge projects that will create more resource base in order to cater for the social needs that it confronts itself with now. And that is why I continue to give thumbs up to the government project, especially on rail transport, water transport, and road transport, and all of that. And they've also gone further to go into agriculture in order to feed itself now. Look at the rice mill project that they've just gone into. Look at the deep sea port that Lagos have just commissioned in partnership with the private sector. And of course, because of the liberality of Lagos towards allowing things to firm up within itself, the Dangote refinery have also been established. It is going to provide jobs for millions of people, both direct and indirect, and so many other companies are also coming on board. The new Lagos airport that is on the way, and the Fort Mainland Bridge, and so many other sundry projects are things that will create more opportunity for Lagos and the people of Nigeria. And that is why I'm so happy that Asiwaju is the president of Nigeria at this time, so that the center and Lagos can move along the same trajectory in terms of speed and deliverables for it to, take Nigeria as a whole, where Lagos and other states will benefit in it.
What's your personal political trajectory in the next 8 years?
Is to see democracy grow very well in Nigeria, to see Lagos occupy its rightful position.
But is that your own personal trajectory?
That's my personal goal as an activist. Remember that while working with Chief Anthony Enauro of CFR, and Professor Wole Soyinka, Dr. Bekora Somkuti, late President Sola Akonde, Abamojola, and so many other icons, we were working to revamp the country, especially creating a new constitution, because we believe that that constitution will be the foundation in which Nigeria can grow uniformly and all of that. So I've been propelled with this idea that Nigeria first and my region come along the line, which again, Lagos is part of it. So that when it gets better for them, it gets better for me, it gets better for everybody.
Comrade Ayodele APC, the Organizing Secretary, All Progressives Congress, Lagos State Chapter, we thank you sincerely for opening up and sparing this little time with us on the program, Front Row Politics.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.